One of the biggest lies that's been weaponized as a narrative to control men, to control their behavior, is niceness, nice guy, niceness. Be a nice guy, right? And I want to break that down in this video and share my thoughts on it. But it's also, this video is very much my small way of honoring the memory of Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk is a great example of a man who was not nice, but deeply cared about the people around him and really did great things, right? He did a lot. And I'm not speaking as somebody who followed him particularly. I was always aware of him. I wasn't a particular follower, but I mean, with what happened when he was murdered, assassinated, it shook the nation, and it's a tragedy. Now, the benefit, I do believe, is that through this, his voice is now magnified, and I'm grateful to see that. But it doesn't lessen the tragedy of seeing a good man killed. A man of peaceful dialogue was murdered. Violence was used to silence him, which is exactly what he warned against, which is the reason for what he was doing was to cultivate communication between two sides that don't normally communicate. Because as he stated, if communication falls apart, the problem is that the people on one side or another start to dehumanize in their own view. They dehumanize the people on the other side because they're no longer communicating. So they no longer see that other person as a person. And when that happens, violence is justified. And that's exactly what we saw play out. So the man lived and died true to his own values. And I have great respect for him for that. This became top of mind because I made a small post on Facebook with my, massive following that I don't have. So thus, it's not because I'm well known or anything. I'm just here to share my thoughts and to share what I feel about this. And but the response was still, like, so far, the people commenting have all been something negative or angry or hateful, and it's disappointing, to put it mildly. People were upset at him, mad at him, hated him because he wasn't nice. So that's what brings this top of mind. This idea that you have to be nice, which is that you have to capitulate to other people's feelings, is pathetic. As men, our job is not to capitulate to our own damn feelings, but to rise above them and recognize that your feelings can and will keep you stuck. Your job as a man, my job, our job, is to rise above our feelings and not be ruled by them. Not to be ruled by our emotion, but to rule and master our own emotion. And that is not nice. But it is the path to strength and to respect. And I'm speaking of self-respect, which is how you gain respect from anyone else, is the degree to which you respect yourself. Because you cannot give what you do not have. So you cannot teach others to respect themselves if you don't respect yourself. And you can't expect other people to respect you if you don't respect yourself. Right? But we've been told to be nice. Especially if you come from, this has been going on for decades, hundreds of years, possibly longer. I don't know. It's a topic for another time to break down, like, Elizabethan England and some of the other, we can look at, like, the threads that have been building to how, masculinity has come under attack, and the worldviews that have cultivated that. But one of the big ones, honestly, one of the big guilty parties is Christian households. Really are a proponent for trying to teach their boys to be nice. And they try to use that somehow Jesus was nice, which is such a delusional perspective. Because if you look at who Jesus was, he was never nice. He was the most caring, compassionate person for all of humanity, but he was not nice. Nobody could be more scathing. My namesake was the Apostle Peter. There were many times where Peter was just being ripped a new one, cut down. He wasn't nice because he called everyone to something greater. And that's the key point that I really want to highlight through this is if you are going to rise to something greater, right? If you're going to be the greater version of yourself. And I don't mean that in some trite way, just some like feel good self-help book kind of way, right? Of like next version of yourself. It's actually about stepping into who you were meant to be, right? Stepping into the potential that I think that we all that there's that grappling with of like, I know I have this potential. This is my journey, right? Everything that I've developed has come from a place of weakness, not from a place of strength. What I mean there is just that I've had to work through so much to come through, and that's why I've developed this. It's not because I was just gifted, I wasn't born like it wasn't just handed to me. I had to work, fight tooth and nail for everything to the level that it is now, and it's just a continuing journey of self-actualization or self-discovery, but not just discovery, but fulfillment of the potential to bring to be a man of integrity. Integrity, the root of that is the same as the root of integration, right? So which we look at with Jungian idea of shadow integration of the shadow, bringing back together, as the thief on the cross said to Christ, "Remember me, O Lord, in thy kingdom." And remember is the opposite of dismember. Right, and if you're looking at right, dismember could be having all your limbs chopped off, but if we're really looking at a soul level, the dismemberment is the fracturing, it's the disintegration, a shattered person, right? And when you're shattered, when you're disintegrated, when your pieces are apart, it takes a great deal of energy to try to operate through the life when you're fractured, because everything can push you apart, right? So as we bring it back together, integration is how we become a man of integrity, which is not so much, right? And that's why I don't specifically believe in the definition of integrity being what you do when people aren't looking. I think that's the outcome. I think integrity is just becoming a whole person, bringing the pieces back together, right? And so that's what I mean by self-discovery and becoming the better version of yourself is really remembering who God made you to be. And to step into that will require the death of the nice. Because nice capitulates to feelings. And that's what we saw people hated, right? Because unfortunately, we live in this world that's divided by divisive narrative that says that if you don't capitulate to somebody's feelings, right, that to call out the problems with mental illness or transgenderism or something, any of these hot topics, is to somehow be not nice to those people. No. What's not nice is to enable somebody in their own self-destruction. Just like it is not nice for yourself to enable your own self-destruction, which we all are guilty of in some way or another. And it's not that's not a shame statement, because one of the other things that has to die away is shame, because shame is something that is used to perpetuate bondage, used by others and used within ourselves. And the only way to become free from the shame that other people might want to project onto you is to free yourself from the shame internally, because you can't receive, like you're cauterizing or cutting off the receptacle, as it were, right? If you no longer carry the shame within yourself, nobody else can use shame and guilt to manipulate you, right? So again, and that's the way that this gets weaponized, is the nice guy syndrome is the shame or the fear of the guilt of, oh well, what if somebody thinks I'm mean, right? And if you're with me as as somebody who has or is struggling with nice guy syndrome, as I say, I'm a recovering nice guy. That's very much there. That's the fear that comes up, and it's good to be aware of that. So if you have a sense of like, oh no, right, as I talk about nice guy, don't judge yourself. Just realize that's just your own subconscious presenting to you the pathway to healing, right? Because the more you lean into that and pull that to the surface and sit with it and deconstruct it, the more that you will find freedom from it. Because the way that this is any self-sabotage, limiting beliefs, all of these kind of processes, right? They keep us trapped through a fear, but the fear can be found, once you trace it to the root, you can realize where the chains lie, and you can set yourself free, because the chains are free fear. fundamentally, talking at the primal level, right? It all boils down to a fear. Shame and guilt have to do with a fear, fundamentally. Um, it, and it's something that I didn't always believe in, but I definitely do now, that this fundamental polarity between fear and love. That love is where we find freedom. Not in a feel-good, in a sappy way, but that true love is the opposite of fear. And fear is that which it perpetuates bondage. Because the fear associated with the nice guy syndrome is, I don't want people to think I'm mean. Right? But it's, I'm going to just to use a simple analogy, as a father to two young children. If they want to eat ice cream, which of course they're going to want to have ice cream, and we have ice cream. But I'm not going to let them just keep eating ice cream as much as they want, because it's not good for them. But it would be nice when they're saying, but I want more. I feel sad because I can't have more. Well, you had enough. We're not going to just keep eating ice cream because it's not healthy for you. Physically, it's not healthy for you, and psychologically, it's not healthy to just never learn the discipline to say no when enough is enough. Enjoy it. Don't let it master you. But the same is true for us internally, right? So the same thing for me. I'd be lying if I said I don't want to just keep eating ice cream, right? Of course, I want to just I love ice cream. It's great. I could eat way too much of it. But the same thing for me. If I was nice to myself, if I allowed my feelings to rule me, the feelings in the moment, I would just eat too much ice cream and then I'd be unhealthy, physically and mentally. So I'm just using that as a trite, as it were, analogy, but it's the same application. It's not nice to hold a boundary. But if you don't hold boundaries, you're actually disrespecting yourself and you are disrespecting others. So to really step into your own confidence, into your own self-respect, you have to kill off the nice guy syndrome. You have to be willing to be seen as mean by others because they don't understand in the moment. That's okay. What's not okay is to be ruled by fear, right? To allow the feelings of others to influence you. And the only way to be influenced by the feelings of others is if we are overly influenced by our own feelings, by our own fear. So those are my thoughts. Just on nice guy syndrome, I really believe is something that is weaponized against men, right? Again, especially if you come from a Christian household, a lot of us have been told to be nice. It's a lie. We're not here to be nice. We're here to be great. Greatness and niceness do not coexist, right? If you want to achieve great things, if you want to really step into your calling, into your purpose, and be of benefit to the world around you, to the society around you, to whatever extent that is, to your family, to your job, to your organization, to your business, maybe you're an entrepreneur, you're right, wherever. If you're really going to make a genuine impact in the lives of others, you have to shed niceness, because niceness will hold you back from doing that, because niceness causes us to be ruled by feelings, to be afraid of discomfort, right? Discomfort is I don't want to say discomfort is the enemy. It's not, because what discomfort is the sign that you are on the right path. So if you're afraid of your own discomfort, as soon as something gets uncomfortable, you pull back. You're not going to have the strength to carry others through their discomfort to get to a better place. That's not nice, right? And we see that in Tim Grover comes to mind, who is Michael Jordan's coach. And a lot of coaches come to mind for me, just anybody who's going to help. But if we're just using like personal training as an example, right? You want to get strong, it's going to be uncomfortable. You want to get in better shape cardio-wise, like, I hate running. It's freaking uncomfortable, but it's good for me. I could give into my feelings and say, I don't like running, so I'm not going to do it. No, I'm going to go freaking do it because I also signed up for the Air Force. I'm going to have to freaking run. Or I could just, or I can be a loser. But I won't respect myself if I give in to my feelings. So that's the question. Are you going to respect yourself more or less? right? And if you don't have self-respect, you're not going to really step into something great. You're just not, because you don't have the capacity within yourself, because your own self-image and your own identity is the restricting factor, bigger or larger, to how much you're really going to be able to accomplish. Because if you don't see yourself, you don't respect yourself as somebody who can do great things, you're not going to do them, because it's simply beyond your own self-prescribed capacity. So that's why shedding nice guy syndrome is so important. And just to loop it back to Charlie Kirk, was somebody who was very, I mean, really, really impressively good in his realm. I have the greatest respect. He did. I don't know. I couldn't do it, but he was a masterful debater. He was masterful at sitting there and keeping his cool, listening to people with radically different worldview from him, and being able to hear them out and discuss it with them. He wasn't nice. He wasn't saying, "Oh yeah, you should feel," like, he wasn't giving into people's feelings or trying to make them comfortable. That's the key of niceness, is trying to make everybody comfortable. That's not healthy, right? He wasn't there to make people comfortable. He was there to call them to something more, to think better, right? To think more deeply, to deconstruct their own worldview, which is the path to growth. You want to grow, you have to deconstruct the myths that are holding you back from being mythic. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Charlie Kirk. Rest in peace. And all of us, let's shed the nice guy so that we can be the guy that we are meant to be. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think.